Thomas Kane thought the worst day of his life was behind him, the day he watched his wife die and couldn't save her. He was wrong. Standing on his porch as the sun bled red across the Arizona sky, watching a lone Apache woman ride toward his ranch with a gang of killers in pursuit, Thomas realized his real test was just beginning. The woman's name was Nayeli, and in the next few minutes, she would either heal his broken heart or get them both killed trying. Either way, the empty shell of a man Thomas had become was about to discover what he was truly made of. Thomas Kane stood on his porch, looking out over his ranch in Arizona. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. He felt the weight of loneliness pressing down on him. His wife had passed away a year ago. Life had changed since then. The laughter they shared was now just a memory. The ranch was quiet. The only sounds were the wind and the distant call of a hawk. Thomas missed the joyful noise of his wife. She had been the heart of the ranch. Now, it felt empty. The field stretched out before him, dry and rugged. He had worked hard to maintain the land, but it was a struggle. Each day felt longer than the last. Thomas often thought about the tragedy that took his wife. It haunted him like a shadow. They had been riding together when an accident occurred. A sudden storm hit, and their horses stumbled. His wife fell, and Thomas could not save her. The guilt lingered, tying him to the past. He wished he could forget, but the memory was always there. As he stood on the porch, he noticed a figure in the distance. It was a lone rider on horseback, moving slowly across the dusty trail. Thomas squinted, trying to see who it was. The rider drew closer, revealing a woman. She wore a simple dress, and her long hair flowed behind her. Thomas felt a flicker of curiosity. Who could she be? The rider came to a stop near the ranch. Thomas felt a mix of hope and apprehension. He had not seen many people since his wife's death. The woman dismounted and approached him. She had dark skin and striking features. Thomas sensed strength in her presence. "Hello," she said, her voice steady. "I am Nayeli." Thomas introduced himself. He offered her water, and she accepted. They spoke briefly about the land and the weather. Thomas felt a connection with her. She seemed to understand the solitude he faced. Nayeli shared stories of her people. She spoke of the Apache tribe and their deep connection to the land. Her eyes sparkled as she talked about the mountains and rivers. Thomas listened intently. Her words brought life to the empty spaces in his heart. As they talked, Thomas noticed the tension in her body. There was something hidden beneath her calm exterior. He sensed a struggle within her. "What brings you here?" he asked gently. Nayeli looked away, a shadow crossing her face. "I seek freedom," she said. "My people have faced danger. A band of men threatens us. I must find a way to help." Thomas felt a surge of protectiveness. He could relate to her fight for freedom. He knew the pain of losing someone. He wanted to help her, but he was unsure how. "Stay here for a while," he offered. "You can rest and gather your strength." Nayeli hesitated. "I cannot put you in danger," she replied. "I live in danger every day," Thomas said, his voice firm. "You are safe here. We can help each other." Nayeli studied him. Thomas felt the weight of her gaze. Finally, she nodded. "I will stay," she said softly. As night fell, Thomas prepared a simple meal. They ate together, sharing stories of their lives. Nayeli spoke of her family's traditions and the beauty of her homeland. Thomas shared memories of his wife and the joy they had found in the small things. As the stars appeared, Thomas felt a sense of peace. The ranch was not as lonely with Nayeli there. They both had experienced loss, but there was hope in their connection. After dinner, they sat outside, listening to the sounds of the night. Crickets chirped, and the wind rustled the leaves. Thomas felt a warmth growing between them. Nayeli had a spirit that inspired him. He could see the strength in her eyes. "Tell me about your dreams," Nayeli asked, breaking the silence. Thomas thought for a moment. "I dream of a time when this ranch will thrive again. I want to honor my wife's memory by making it a home." Nayeli smiled. "You have a kind heart, Thomas. Your dreams can come true." As they spoke, the bond between them deepened. They were two souls seeking solace. Thomas felt a flicker of hope for the first time in months. Nayeli could be more than a visitor. She could become a part of his life. The night grew colder, and Thomas led Nayeli to a spare room in the ranch house. He offered her a blanket. "You can rest here," he said. "Thank you," she replied, her voice soft. As she settled in, Thomas stood at the door for a moment. He felt a sense of purpose returning. Nayeli had entered his life like a breath of fresh air. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he felt ready to face it. The next morning, the sun rose bright and clear. Thomas awoke early, preparing breakfast. He thought about Naeli and the strength she had shown. He felt a spark of determination. He wanted to help her, to protect her. When Naeli joined him, she looked refreshed. They ate together, and Thomas noticed the light in her eyes. She was strong, and he admired her spirit. As they finished breakfast, Thomas felt a shift in the air. There was a sense of urgency. He knew they needed to talk about the danger that Naeli faced. Naeli, he began, we need to discuss what comes next. There may be danger from the bandits. Naeli nodded, her expression serious. I am ready to fight for my people. I will not let fear control me. Thomas admired her bravery. They both had battles to face. They would stand together against whatever came their way. The bond between Thomas and Naeli grew stronger. Their shared pain and hope created a connection that could not be broken. In the rugged terrain of Arizona, they found each other. Together, they would face the challenges ahead. Naeli sat outside the ranch house, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The sun rose high in the sky, casting bright light over the desert landscape. She felt a mix of hope and worry. The beauty of the land reminded her of her home, but danger lurked nearby. She thought of her tribe. They were strong and proud. She missed them deeply. They had always relied on each other, sharing stories and traditions. Now, she was far away, and her heart ached for their safety. Just then, she heard the sound of hoofs. A group of riders appeared on the trail, moving swiftly. Naeli's heart raced. She recognized the men. They were part of the bandit gang that threatened her people. Panic washed over her. She knew they would not stop until they found her. Naeli quickly turned and rushed into the house. Thomas, she called. Thomas came out, sensing her fear. What is it? He asked, concern etched on his face. The bandits are close. They are searching for me, Naeli said, her voice shaking. Thomas's expression hardened. We need to act fast. They cannot find you here. Naeli nodded. We must hide. They will not stop until they have me. Follow me, Thomas said, leading her to a small storage shed behind the house. It was dark and filled with old tools and supplies. Stay here and keep quiet. I will handle this. Naeli felt a surge of gratitude. She admired Thomas's bravery. Be careful, she whispered. Thomas nodded and stepped outside, closing the shed door gently. Naeli held her breath, listening intently as he moved away. Thomas approached the riders, trying to appear calm. He recognized their leader, a rough man named Victor. He had a reputation for cruelty. Thomas stood firm, ready to defend Naeli and his ranch. Thomas Kane, Victor called out, his voice loud and mocking. We are looking for a girl, an Apache Maiden. Have you seen her? Thomas kept his face neutral. I haven't seen anyone, he replied. Victor stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. You expect me to believe that? We have reason to think she is here. We will search your ranch. Thomas felt his heart race. He could not let them into the house. There is nothing here for you. Leave now, or I will call for help, he warned. Victor laughed, a cruel sound. Help? You think you can stop us? We are not afraid of you. As the bandits began to spread out, looking around, Thomas felt a wave of fear. He needed to buy time. If you want to find her, you'll have to go through me, he said, standing tall. The bandits hesitated, surprised by Thomas's defiance. Naeli listened from the shed, her heart pounding. She knew Thomas was risking everything for her. She wanted to scream for him to run, but she stayed quiet, knowing he needed to focus. Victor's eyes gleamed with anger. You are making a mistake, Thomas. We will find her, and then you will regret this. Just then, a loud noise came from the shed. One of the bandits had stumbled upon it. Hey, there's something in here, he shouted. Naeli's heart sank. She had to act. She could not let them take her. With a swift movement, she pushed open the shed door, stepping out with determination. Get away from him, she shouted. Thomas turned, his eyes wide with surprise. Naeli, no. But it was too late. Naeli stood tall, her hands clenched into fists. The bandits stared at her, caught off guard. They had not expected to see her. Victor's expression shifted from surprise to fury. There you are, he shouted, pointing at her. Capture her. Naeli felt a rush of adrenaline. She had to fight. She had trained for this. She was not going back to them. Thomas stepped forward, ready to protect her. You will not take her, he yelled, standing in front of Naeli. The bandits charged, but Naeli was faster. She moved with grace and power, dodging their attacks. She struck back, using her training to defend herself and Thomas. Thomas fought alongside her, surprising even himself with his strength. Together, they pushed back against the bandits, working as a team. Naeli was fierce, and Thomas was determined. They were fighting for their lives. As the battle raged, Naeli caught Victor's eye. She felt a fire inside her. She charged at him, ready to confront the man who threatened her people. Victor swung at her, but she ducked and countered with a swift kick to his side. He stumbled back, anger filling his eyes. "You will pay for this," he shouted. But Naeli was not afraid. With each movement, she felt more in control. She had found her strength again. The other bandits began to fall back, realizing they were outmatched. Thomas and Naeli fought together, pushing them away from the ranch. Finally, Victor, realizing he was losing, gave a furious shout. "We will not forget this. You will pay." He turned and fled, leading the remaining bandits with him. Breathing heavily, Thomas and Naeli stood in the silence that followed. The danger had passed, but the tension remained. Naeli looked at Thomas, her heart racing. "We did it," she said, a mix of disbelief and relief in her voice. Thomas nodded, still catching his breath. "You were incredible," he said, admiration shining in his eyes. Naeli smiled, but worry lingered. "They will come back. We need to prepare." "Then we will prepare," Thomas replied, determination in his voice. Together, they stood side by side, their bond stronger than ever. They had faced danger and emerged victorious. But they knew more challenges lay ahead. Together, they would fight for their freedom. Together, they would protect what mattered most. The sun rose over the ranch, casting a warm glow across the land. Thomas and Naeli were busy preparing for whatever might come next. They felt the weight of the recent battle hanging over them. The bandits had fled, but the threat was still real. Thomas gathered supplies while Naeli sharpened a small knife. They worked in silence, each lost in their thoughts. Thomas felt a sense of urgency. He needed to protect Naeli and the ranch. He could not let the bandits return unchallenged. "Do you think they will come back?" Naeli asked, breaking the silence. Thomas paused, looking at her. "I'm sure of it. They won't give up easily. We need a plan." Naeli nodded, her expression serious. "We must be ready. I have some skills that can help." Thomas looked at her, intrigued. "What skills?" "I know how to track and find food in the wild. I can set traps and create defenses. I can help you protect this place," Naeli explained, her voice steady. "That would be useful," Thomas agreed. "We can work together to make this ranch safe." They spent the day setting up traps around the perimeter. Thomas showed Naeli how to use some of his tools, while she taught him about the natural plants that could help them. Each moment spent together brought them closer. As they worked, Thomas shared stories of his life before the tragedy. He spoke about his wife and their dreams for the ranch. Naeli listened closely, her heart aching for his loss. She shared her own stories too, about her tribe's traditions and her childhood. Naeli felt a bond growing between them. They were two souls, both carrying the weight of their pasts. But together, they could build something new. As the sun began to set, they finished their preparations. Thomas looked at the traps they had set and felt a sense of pride. "We have done well today," he said. Naeli smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. "Yes, we have. But we must stay alert." That night, they took turns keeping watch. Thomas sat outside, staring into the dark. He felt a sense of peace in the quiet night, but he knew the calm could not last. Naeli joined him, sitting close. "Do you ever miss them?" Naeli asked softly, referring to his wife. Thomas looked at the stars. "Every day. But I know she would want me to keep living, to find happiness again." Naeli nodded, understanding his pain. "And what about you? Do you think you can return to your tribe?" Naeli felt a pang in her heart. She wanted to be with her people again. But she also felt a connection to Thomas. "I want to protect my people," she said. "But I also want to help you here. I want to find a home." Thomas turned to her, searching her eyes. "You have a home here, Naeli. With me." The words hung in the air. They both knew that they were forging a new path. The night passed slowly, filled with unspoken feelings and shared hopes. The next morning, they woke early. Thomas felt a sense of determination. They needed to be ready for the bandits. He looked at Naeli, who was packing her things. "What's the plan for today?" he asked. "We should scout the area. We need to know how far the bandits have gone." "I can help track them," Naeli suggested. Thomas agreed. "Let's do it. We need to know what we're up against." They set out into the wild, moving carefully and quietly. Naeli led the way, her senses sharp. She knew how to read the signs left by others. Broken branches and disturbed dirt told stories of movement. After an hour of tracking, Naeli stopped. "Look," she said, pointing to the ground. Thomas knelt beside her, examining the ground. "Footprints," he said, noticing the size. "They are fresh." Naeli nodded. They came this way. We need to be cautious. They followed the trail, staying hidden. The landscape changed as they moved deeper into the wilderness. The beauty of the desert surrounded them, but danger lurked in the shadows. As they continued, Naeli spotted something ahead. There, she whispered, pointing to a small camp. Thomas squinted, trying to see. Do you think it's the bandits? Naeli nodded. We should observe before we make a move. They found a spot behind some rocks and watched the camp. A few men were sitting around a fire, talking and laughing. Naeli felt a knot in her stomach. She could see that Victor was among them, his face angry and determined. They are planning something, Naeli said. We need to know what it is. Thomas agreed. We can't let them catch us. We need to return to the ranch and prepare. As they turned to leave, Naeli stumbled. A small rock rolled beneath her foot, making noise. The bandits turned, sensing movement. Who's there? Victor shouted, standing up. Thomas grabbed Naeli's arm. Run, he yelled. They dashed away from the camp, hearts pounding. The bandits shouted and gave chase, but Thomas and Naeli were faster. They navigated through the dense brush, relying on their instincts. They reached a narrow path that led back to the ranch. Thomas glanced back, seeing the bandits closing in. We need to split up, he shouted. Naeli hesitated. No, we should stay together. We can't risk them catching us both. I'll lead them away. You get back to the ranch, Thomas insisted, his voice firm. Naeli felt fear rise in her chest. I won't leave you. Trust me, Thomas urged. I'll find you. Just go. With a heavy heart, Naeli nodded. She turned and ran toward the ranch, her legs pumping. She could not look back. She had to trust Thomas. As she reached the ranch, she quickly set up the defenses they had prepared. She felt a rush of adrenaline. She knew Thomas was out there, buying her time. She would not let his sacrifice be in vain. With her heart racing, Naeli grabbed a weapon and waited by the entrance. She felt the weight of determination on her shoulders. She would protect her home, no matter the cost. As the bandits approached, Naeli stood ready. She would face them alone if she had to. The bond they had formed with Thomas would guide her. She would not back down. Together, they had fought for their lives, and now she would fight for his. The battle was far from over. But Naeli was prepared to defend what mattered most. She was ready to stand and fight. Naeli stood at the entrance of the ranch, her heart pounding. She gripped her weapon tightly, ready for whatever came next. She felt a mixture of fear and determination. She had to protect her home and honor Thomas's sacrifice. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the land. Naeli listened carefully, her senses heightened. She could hear the sound of hoofbeats approaching. The bandits were coming. She took a deep breath and steadied herself. She had trained for moments like this. She remembered her people's lessons on courage and strength. Naeli was ready to face the danger head-on. As the bandits rode closer, she could see their faces twisted with anger. Victor led the group, his eyes burning with rage. They had not forgotten the fight at the camp. Naeli felt a surge of adrenaline. She would not let them intimidate her. The bandits dismounted and spread out, searching the area. Naeli watched from her hiding spot, her heart racing. She needed to act quickly. She had set up traps around the ranch, and now it was time to use them. With a swift movement, Naeli sprang into action. She triggered one of the traps, a net hidden in the brush. It fell over two of the bandits, catching them off guard. They shouted in surprise, struggling to free themselves. Naeli took the opportunity to strike. She moved quickly, using her knife to fend off another bandit who approached. She was fierce and focused, her training guiding her every move. Get her! Victor shouted, his voice filled with anger. Naeli could see him pushing through the chaos, determined to reach her. She steeled herself, knowing that she had to keep him at bay. She dodged and weaved, using the ranch's layout to her advantage. The fight intensified as more bandits rushed toward her. Naeli felt the weight of the battle pressing down on her, but she did not waver. She was fighting not just for herself, but for Thomas as well. In the midst of the chaos, she caught sight of a familiar figure. Thomas appeared at the edge of the ranch, breathless but determined. Naeli, he shouted, his voice strong. Naeli felt a rush of relief at the sight of him. I'm here, she called back. As Thomas joined the fight, the two formed a powerful team. They moved together, anticipating each other's movements. Naeli felt a new surge of strength as they fought side by side. Thomas tackled a bandit, taking him to the ground. Naeli quickly followed, using her knife to fend off anyone who approached. Together, they pushed back against the attackers, their bond evident in their teamwork. Victor roared in frustration as he watched his men fall. You think you can win? This is not over, he yelled. Nayeli locked eyes with Victor, her resolve hardening. It ends here, she declared, her voice steady. With renewed determination, Nayeli and Thomas fought with everything they had. They faced the bandits as a united front, working in harmony. Thomas's strength complemented Nayeli's agility. They were a force to be reckoned with. As the battle raged on, Nayeli spotted an opening. She moved quickly, darting toward Victor. She had to confront him and end this once and for all. Victor saw her coming and sneered. You think you can defeat me? You're just a girl. Nayeli felt fire in her heart. I am more than that, she said fiercely. She lunged at him, her knife poised for a strike. Victor swung at her, but she ducked and rolled, avoiding his attack. She sprang back up, her focus unwavering. She felt the power of her ancestors guiding her. In one swift motion, Nayeli lunged forward, slashing at Victor's arm. He stumbled back, surprised by her strength. Nayeli pressed her advantage, moving in close. Enough! Victor shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. You will pay for this. But Nayeli stood her ground, refusing to back down. Not today, she replied firmly. Just then, Thomas joined her side. We can finish this together, he said, determination shining in his eyes. Nayeli nodded, feeling a sense of unity with him. Together, they confronted Victor. The remaining bandits hesitated, unsure of what to do. Leave now, and do not return, Thomas warned, his voice steady. This is your last chance. Victor's face twisted in rage, but he knew when he was outnumbered. He glanced at his men, who looked uncertain. We will regroup, he spat. This is not over. With that, the bandits retreated, scrambling to mount their horses. Nayeli and Thomas stood firm, watching as they rode away into the distance. As silence fell over the ranch, Nayeli and Thomas turned to each other, breathless but victorious. We did it, Nayeli said, disbelief in her voice. Thomas nodded, a proud smile on his face. You were incredible, he said. I couldn't have done it without you. Nayeli felt warmth spread through her. They had fought together and won. They had defended their home and each other. But even as they celebrated their victory, Nayeli knew the fight was not over. The bandits would return, and they would need to be ready. We must prepare for the next time, Nayeli said, her tone serious. Thomas agreed. Yes, we will strengthen our defenses and train together. We cannot let our guard down. Nayeli felt a sense of purpose. They were in this together. They would face whatever challenges came their way. As they surveyed the ranch, Nayeli's heart swelled with hope. They had built something strong, a bond forged in fire and danger. Together, they could face anything. With the sun setting behind them, Nayeli and Thomas turned to each other, ready to face the future. Together, they would protect their home and their hearts. The fight for freedom was far from over, but they were ready to stand strong. Nayeli and Thomas spent the following days reinforcing the ranch. Together, they set up barriers and traps, making the area more secure. They worked tirelessly, determined to prevent another attack from the bandits. Each morning, they rose with the sun, ready to face the day. They trained together, honing their skills. Thomas learned how to move quietly through the brush, while Nayeli practiced using weapons more effectively. They pushed each other to be better, their bond growing stronger through shared effort. One afternoon, as they were practicing near the barn, Nayeli stopped suddenly. Do you hear that? She asked, her eyes narrowing. Thomas paused, listening intently. In the distance, he could hear the faint sound of hoofbeats. It sounds like someone is coming, he said, scanning the horizon. Nayeli felt a rush of anxiety. It could be the bandits. Thomas nodded. We need to be ready. Let's take cover. They quickly moved to a spot behind some barrels, hiding from view as they waited. Nayeli's heart raced as the sound grew louder. She could feel the tension building. As the riders came into view, Nayeli felt a mix of relief and concern. It was not the bandits. Instead, it was a group of local townsfolk, riding toward the ranch. They approached cautiously, their expressions wary. Thomas stepped out from behind the barrels, raising a hand in greeting. Hello. We mean no harm. The townsfolk slowed their horses, exchanging glances. One man, a tall figure with a weathered face, spoke up. We heard about the trouble you had with the bandits. We came to check on you. Nayeli stepped forward, feeling a sense of hope. Thank you for coming. We're okay, but we are preparing for another attack. The man nodded, concern etched on his face. We've heard stories about Victor and his gang. They're dangerous. We wanted to see if you needed help. Thomas looked at Nayeli, then back at the townsfolk. We would appreciate any assistance you can offer. The group dismounted, gathering around them. We're stronger together, the man said. We can help you defend the ranch. Naeli felt gratitude swell in her heart. Thank you. We can teach you what we know about the land and how to protect it. As they discussed their plans, Naeli noticed a shift in the townsfolk's demeanor. They seemed more relaxed, willing to trust her and Thomas. It was a small step toward building a community of support. That evening, they all gathered around a fire. The townsfolk shared stories about their lives and the struggles they faced. Naeli listened, feeling a sense of belonging that she had not felt in a long time. One woman, a kind-faced mother, spoke about her children. We all want to keep our families safe. That's why we're here, she said. Naeli nodded, understanding the weight of those words. We are fighting for our homes and our people. Together, we can protect what we love. The townsfolk agreed, their spirits rising. They began to discuss strategies for defense. They shared ideas about setting up lookout points and creating a signal system to warn each other of danger. As the fire crackled, Naeli felt a sense of unity. They were no longer alone. They had formed a bond with the townsfolk, and together, they would prepare for the challenges ahead. The next day, they began to implement their plans. Naeli and Thomas worked alongside the townsfolk, showing them how to set traps and build barriers. They moved with purpose, each person contributing their strengths. As they worked, Naeli noticed the change in the air. There was a sense of hope, a feeling that they could overcome anything together. She felt a growing connection to the land and the people around her. One afternoon, as they were setting up additional defenses, Thomas approached Naeli, a serious look on his face. We need to talk about what happens next, he said. Naeli turned to him, sensing the weight of his words. What do you mean? If the bandits come back, we need a solid plan. We can't just rely on traps. We need to know how to fight, Thomas explained. Naeli nodded, understanding the importance of preparation. We can organize a training session. Everyone needs to know how to defend themselves. Thomas smiled, relieved. That's a great idea. We can teach them everything we know. They gathered the townsfolk that evening, explaining the need for training. Naeli felt a surge of confidence as she stood before them. Together, we will learn to fight back. We will protect our homes. The townsfolk listened, their expressions determined. They agreed to train every day, committing to each other and their shared safety. As the days turned into weeks, Naeli and Thomas led the training sessions. They taught basic fighting techniques, how to use weapons, and how to work as a team. The townsfolk grew stronger, more confident in their abilities. One evening, after a long day of training, Thomas and Naeli sat together under the stars. We've built something special here, Thomas said, his voice filled with pride. Naeli smiled, feeling the warmth of his words. Yes, we have. This ranch is no longer just a place for us. It's a home for everyone. Thomas nodded, his gaze serious. But we must stay vigilant. The bandits will not give up easily. Naeli agreed, the weight of their reality settling in. We are ready for them. Together, we will stand strong. As they gazed up at the stars, Naeli felt a sense of hope. They had created a community out of hardship. They had formed bonds that would help them face whatever came next. With renewed determination, they turned back toward the ranch, ready to continue their fight for freedom and safety. Together, they would protect their home and each other, no matter the cost. The spirit of unity would guide them through the challenges ahead. Days turned into weeks as Naeli and Thomas continued to train the townsfolk. The ranch became a hub of activity. People came together, sharing skills and stories, growing stronger as a community. Naeli felt a sense of belonging that she had longed for. One sunny morning, as they gathered for another training session, Naeli noticed a change in the townsfolk. They stood taller, their faces filled with determination. They were ready to defend what they loved. Today, we will practice working as a team, Naeli announced, her voice steady. She felt the energy in the air. When the bandits return, we must rely on each other. Thomas stepped forward. We will form small groups. Each team will have a leader. You will communicate and move as one. The townsfolk nodded, eager to learn. Naeli could see the excitement in their eyes. They were ready to take on the challenge. As the training began, Naeli moved among the groups, giving guidance and encouragement. She watched as they practiced drills, working together to build trust and confidence. After several hours of training, they took a break. As they rested, Naeli gathered everyone around. Let's share what we've learned, she suggested. We can grow stronger by learning from each other. One of the women, a mother named Maria, spoke up. I've learned how to use a bow. I feel more confident now. Another man, Carlos, added, I've improved my aim. I can hit the target much better. Nayeli smiled, feeling pride swell in her chest. That's wonderful. We're all improving. Together, we will be ready. As they shared their experiences, Nayeli felt a deep sense of connection with the townsfolk. They were no longer just neighbors. They were a family united by a common purpose. That evening, as the sun set, Nayeli and Thomas sat on the porch of the ranch. They watched the sky change colors, feeling a sense of peace after a long day. Nayeli, Thomas began, I've been thinking about our plan. If the bandits come, we need to know how to respond quickly. We should set up a signal system. Nayeli nodded. That's a good idea. We can use smoke signals or lanterns. It will help us communicate when danger is near. They discussed their ideas, feeling a sense of urgency. The bandits were still out there, lurking in the shadows. They had to be prepared for anything. The next day, Nayeli and Thomas gathered the townsfolk again. We need to establish a signal system, Nayeli said, her voice strong. This will help us stay safe and alert each other. They worked together to create a plan. They decided to use colored flags and smoke signals to communicate. Each color would represent a different message. Red would signal danger, while green would mean all clear. As they set up the system, Nayeli felt a sense of hope. They were building a network of safety and support. The townsfolk were becoming more connected, more determined to stand together. Weeks passed, and the bond within the community grew stronger. They held meetings to discuss their progress and share resources. Nayeli felt proud of the progress they had made. One evening, as they gathered around the fire, a sense of camaraderie filled the air. The townsfolk shared stories of their past, their dreams for the future. Nayeli listened, feeling the warmth of connection. Suddenly, a young boy named Miguel ran into the circle, his face flushed with excitement. I saw something, he said, breathless. There are horses on the horizon. Nayeli's heart raced. Are they the bandits? She asked, her voice serious. Miguel nodded, pointing toward the distance. I think so. They are coming this way. Thomas sprang into action. Everyone, to your positions. We need to prepare. The townsfolk quickly moved, taking their places. Nayeli felt adrenaline surge through her veins. This was the moment they had been preparing for. As the townsfolk took their positions, Nayeli and Thomas set up a lookout point. They climbed to a higher spot, scanning the horizon. In the distance, they could see a group of riders approaching. It's them, Thomas said, his jaw clenched. They're back. Nayeli felt a mix of fear and determination. We are ready. We've trained for this. As the bandits drew closer, Nayeli could see Victor at the front, his expression dark and menacing. They've come for revenge, she whispered, steeling herself for the fight ahead. Thomas nodded, gripping his weapon tightly. We will stand together. We won't let them take what we've built. The bandits stopped at the edge of the ranch, dismounting with a sense of arrogance. Victor stepped forward, his eyes scanning the area. You think you can defend this place? He shouted, his voice filled with contempt. You're outnumbered. Nayeli felt the townsfolk shift behind her, their resolve evident. We may be outnumbered, but we are not afraid, she called back, her voice steady. Victor sneered, clearly angered. You're all fools. You think you can fight us? We will take everything from you. As the bandits advanced, Nayeli raised her weapon high. We will protect our home. Together. The townsfolk rallied behind her, standing strong. Nayeli felt a surge of energy as they prepared to face the threat. They had trained hard for this moment. They would not back down. With a signal from Nayeli, the townsfolk moved into action. They worked as a team, using their training to confront the bandits. The battle began, fierce and chaotic. Nayeli fought with everything she had, using her skills to protect her home and her people. The ranch was filled with shouts and the sounds of struggle. The townsfolk stood united, determined to defend what they loved. As the fight raged on, Nayeli felt a sense of hope. They had come together as a community, ready to face the challenge. They would stand strong against the darkness that threatened to consume them. In the midst of the chaos, Nayeli caught a glimpse of Thomas. He was fighting bravely, pushing back against the bandits. She felt a rush of pride for him. They were in this together. But the battle was far from over. The bandits were fierce, and Nayeli knew they had to remain focused. They could not let fear take control. Together, they would fight for their freedom, their home, and their future. The battle raged on, fierce and unrelenting. Nayeli fought alongside Thomas and the townsfolk, their determination shining through the chaos. With each clash, they pushed back against the bandits, refusing to let fear take hold. Nayeli moved swiftly, her instincts guiding her as she dodged an attack. She struck back, her weapon finding its mark. She could hear shouts and cries from her friends, but she focused on her task. They were fighting for their home, and she would not let them down. "Stay together," Thomas shouted, his voice rising above the din. Naeli saw him rallying the townsfolk, urging them to keep their formation. They were a team, working as one. Naeli felt a surge of pride as she watched them fight. Each person had trained hard, and their efforts were paying off. The townsfolk were holding their ground against the bandits. They were strong, united by a common purpose. As the battle continued, Naeli spotted Victor pushing through the crowd, his face twisted in anger. He was coming for her. She felt a rush of adrenaline. She had to confront him. "Victor!" Naeli shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. "This ends now." Victor turned, his eyes narrowing as he locked onto her. "You think you can defeat me, little girl?" he taunted, a cruel smile on his face. Naeli felt the fire inside her. "I am not afraid of you." With that, she charged at him, her heart pounding. She dodged a swing from one of his men, moving with agility. Naeli was focused and determined. She had trained for this moment. Victor swung at her, but Naeli ducked and countered with a quick strike. She could see the surprise on his face. He had underestimated her. "You're stronger than I thought," he growled, regaining his balance. "But it won't be enough." Naeli pressed forward, her resolve unwavering. "You will not take this home from us." The fight between them intensified. Naeli used all her training, her strikes precise and powerful. She was fueled by the strength of her community, the bond they had formed. Meanwhile, Thomas was fighting nearby, pushing back against a group of bandits. He glanced over at Naeli, seeing her confront Victor. He felt a surge of pride for her bravery, but knew he had to stay focused on his own battle. "Stay strong," he shouted to the townsfolk, his voice steady. "We can do this together." Naeli continued to clash with Victor, each movement filled with purpose. She felt the weight of her ancestors behind her, guiding her in this fight. She refused to let fear win. Just as it seemed she had the upper hand, Victor unleashed a fierce attack that caught her off guard. He struck her arm, causing her to stumble back. Pain shot through her, but she quickly regained her footing. "Is that all you've got?" Victor taunted, his confidence growing. "You will fall like the rest of them." Naeli gritted her teeth, pushing through the pain. She remembered her training and the strength of her community. She could not give up. With renewed determination, she charged at Victor again, using her speed to her advantage. She ducked under his swing and struck back, her knife finding its mark on his side. Victor staggered back, surprise etched on his face. You're stronger than I thought," he gasped, anger flashing in his eyes. Naeli took a deep breath, her heart racing. "This is for my people," she shouted, feeling the fire of her spirit. As the fight continued, Naeli could sense the tide beginning to turn. The townsfolk were rallying, fighting back with renewed energy. They were a force to be reckoned with, united against the bandits. "Don't back down," Naeli urged, her voice rising above the chaos. "We fight for our home." The townsfolk responded with a cheer, their spirits soaring. Naeli felt the power of their unity. They were no longer just individuals, they were a community ready to defend what mattered most. As the battle raged on, Naeli noticed a shift in Victor's demeanor. He was starting to panic. The bandits were losing ground, their confidence wavering. Naeli pressed her advantage, determined to finish what they had started. With one final push, she charged at Victor, her knife aimed directly at him. He swung wildly, but Naeli was quick. She sidestepped his attack and struck with precision, disarming him. Victor stumbled back, realizing he was outmatched. "You think you've won?" he spat, desperation creeping into his voice. Naeli stood tall, her heart steady. "Yes, we have won. You will not take her home from us." With that, she turned and signaled to Thomas. "Now," she shouted. The townsfolk surged forward, rallying around Naeli. They pushed the remaining bandits back, their unity overwhelming. Naeli felt a sense of victory wash over her as the bandits began to retreat. Victor glared at them, his expression one of fury and defeat. "You'll regret this," he shouted as he turned to flee, his remaining men following closely behind. As the dust settled, Naeli and Thomas stood together, breathing heavily but filled with triumph. The ranch was theirs, and they had defended it with everything they had. The townsfolk cheered, their spirits soaring. "We did it," Maria exclaimed, her face beaming with pride. Naeli felt tears of joy welling in her eyes. They had faced their fears and emerged victorious. They had built a community from the ground up, and now they were stronger than ever. Thomas turned to Naeli, his expression filled with admiration. "You were incredible," he said, his voice warm. Naeli smiled, feeling the bond between them grow even stronger. We did this together. We are a team. As they surveyed the ranch, the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the landscape. Naeli felt a sense of hope for the future. They had fought for their home, and they had prevailed. Together, they would continue to protect what they had built. They would face whatever challenges came next, side by side. The spirit of their community would guide them forward, stronger than ever. The dust from the battle settled around the ranch, but the air was still thick with tension. Naeli and Thomas stood side by side, surrounded by the townsfolk who had fought bravely alongside them. They had pushed back the bandits, but everyone knew the threat wasn't gone for good. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the land, Naeli felt a mixture of relief and concern. They had won today, but Victor would not give up easily. He would come back, and they needed to be ready. "Everyone, gather around," Thomas called, his voice steady. The townsfolk formed a circle, their faces showing a mix of exhaustion and pride. "We fought hard today," Naeli began, her heart swelling with gratitude. "And we won because we stood together. But we must prepare for the future. Victor will return." The townsfolk nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. They had felt the danger, and they knew they had to be vigilant. "We need to come up with a plan," Thomas suggested. "We can't just wait for them to attack again." Naeli stepped forward. "We have trained hard, but we need to focus on strategy. We can set up watch points around the ranch. We need to know when they are coming." One of the men, Carlos, raised his hand. "I can take the night watch. I know the area well and can move quietly," he offered. "Thank you, Carlos," Naeli replied, feeling a sense of unity. "We will need others to help monitor the surrounding trails as well." As they discussed the details, Naeli felt a sense of purpose. They were not just a group of individuals anymore. They were a community dedicated to protecting one another. "Let's divide into teams," Thomas suggested. "Each team can cover a different area. We'll rotate the watch so everyone gets a chance to rest." The townsfolk agreed, eager to contribute. They began to form teams, each person taking on a role that suited their skills. Naeli felt pride swell in her chest as she watched them work together. They had come so far. That night, as the stars twinkled above, Naeli lay in bed, reflecting on the day's events. She felt a sense of peace knowing they had defended their home. But she also felt the weight of the future pressing down on her. What if the bandits returned stronger? What if they brought more men? Naeli shook her head, trying to push the thoughts away. They had to focus on what they could control. The next morning, after a restless night, Naeli rose early. She stepped outside to find Thomas already awake, standing at the edge of the ranch and watching the sunrise. "Good morning," he said, turning to her with a smile. "Ready for another day?" Naeli nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "We need to finalize our plans and start setting up the watch points." As they worked together, setting up lookout posts and barriers around the ranch, Naeli felt a sense of camaraderie with Thomas. They were a team, each supporting the other. Hours passed, and they made good progress. The townsfolk worked hard, sharing laughs and stories as they built defenses. Naeli felt a warmth in her heart. They were creating something special together. Later that afternoon, as they took a break, Carlos returned from his watch. He looked serious as he approached Naeli and Thomas. "I saw something," he said, his voice low. "What did you see?" Thomas asked, concern in his eyes. "Riders in the distance. They seem to be scouting the area," Carlos replied, his expression grim. Naeli's heart raced. "How many?" "Just a few, but they're watching us," Carlos said, glancing back toward the horizon. "Then we must be ready," Naeli said, her voice firm. "We can't let them catch us off guard." Thomas nodded. "Let's gather everyone and prepare for what's to come." As the townsfolk gathered, Naeli felt a surge of determination. They had trained for this moment, and they would not back down. "Everyone, listen up," Naeli called, capturing their attention. "We have spotted riders in the distance. They may be scouting us. We need to prepare." The townsfolk exchanged worried glances, but Naeli saw determination in their eyes. "We will not let them take our home. We stand together. Let's position ourselves around the ranch," Thomas added, his voice steady. "We need to be ready for anything." They quickly moved into action, taking their places at the lookout points. Naeli felt a rush of adrenaline as she positioned herself near the main entrance. She gripped her weapon tightly, prepared for whatever might come. As the hours passed, Naeli kept her eyes on the horizon. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land. The tension in the air was palpable. Suddenly, She spotted movement. The riders were returning, and they were not alone. Nayeli's heart sank. It looked like Victor had brought reinforcements. "Get ready," Nayeli shouted, her voice filled with urgency. "They're coming." The townsfolk sprang into action, moving swiftly to their positions. Nayeli felt fear creeping in, but she pushed it aside. They had trained for this. They could do this together. As the bandits approached, Nayeli's blood ran cold. She could see Victor at the front, a wicked smile on his face. He had come back, and he was ready for a fight. "Prepare yourselves," Thomas shouted, rallying the townsfolk. "We can't let them through." Nayeli steadied her breath, focusing on the task ahead. They would defend their home once more. She glanced at Thomas, and he nodded, a silent promise of support between them. As the bandits drew closer, Nayeli felt a surge of strength. They had faced danger before, and they would do it again. Together, they would protect what mattered most. "Now," Nayeli yelled, signaling the townsfolk to take their positions. The ranch was their home, and they would stand strong against the threat. The battle was about to begin again, but Nayeli felt a spark of hope. They were ready. They would fight together, united in their purpose. The spirit of their community would guide them through the challenge ahead. The tension hung thick in the air as Nayeli and the townsfolk readied themselves for the battle ahead. The bandits approached, their numbers greater this time, but Nayeli felt a surge of determination from her community. They had trained hard, and now was the time to show their strength. "Stay focused," Thomas shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. "We fight for our home. We fight for each other." Nayeli positioned herself near the entrance, her heart racing. She could see Victor at the front, a malicious grin on his face. He had returned with a vengeance, and Nayeli could sense his intent to reclaim what he believed was his. "Prepare yourselves," Nayeli called to her friends. "We have each other's backs. We will not let them take this place." As the bandits drew closer, Nayeli could see their eyes glinting with anger and greed. They were ready for a fight, but so were the townsfolk. Nayeli felt confidence swell within her. They had come together as a family, and together they would stand strong. "On my signal," Thomas yelled, raising his hand high. The townsfolk shifted, readying themselves for the confrontation. Nayeli's breath quickened as she watched Victor and his men approach, their horses kicking up dust. "Now," Thomas shouted, lowering his arm. The townsfolk sprang into action, moving quickly to block the entrance to the ranch. Nayeli felt a rush of adrenaline as they prepared for the first wave of bandits. As the first attackers charged, Nayeli fought with everything she had. She dodged an incoming strike, countering with precision. She felt the energy of her community behind her, guiding her movements. "Let's show them what we're made of," she shouted, her voice ringing out. The townsfolk responded with a roar, pushing back against the bandits. Nayeli moved among them, striking down attackers and encouraging her friends. She felt the strength of their unity fueling her every action. The battle raged on, and Nayeli focused on keeping her friends safe. She saw Thomas fighting nearby, his movements strong and decisive. They were a team, each fighting for the other. As the chaos unfolded, Nayeli noticed Victor breaking through the ranks, trying to reach her. He was fierce and relentless, but Nayeli would not let him pass. She had to stop him. "Victor," Nayeli shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. "You will not take this home from us." Victor turned, rage filling his eyes. "You think you can defeat me again? You're nothing but a nuisance." Nayeli felt a surge of determination. "I am more than that. I fight for my people." With that, she charged at him. The two clashed, their weapons meeting with a loud clang. Nayeli fought with all her strength, fueled by the love she had for her community. As they battled, Nayeli felt the ground shift beneath her. She was focused, but she knew she had to keep an eye on her surroundings. The townsfolk were still fighting, and she needed to protect them. "Stay strong," Nayeli called to her friends, encouraging them as they faced their own battles. "We can do this." As the fight continued, Nayeli pushed Victor back, using her agility to her advantage. He was strong, but she was determined. She remembered her training and the support of her community. They had each other's backs. Suddenly, Nayeli spotted one of the townsfolk struggling against multiple bandits. "Help him," she shouted, pointing toward the man. A few townsfolk quickly moved to assist, pushing back the attackers. Nayeli felt a rush of pride as she watched them work together. They were fighting as one, united in their purpose. But just as Nayeli focused on Victor again, she felt a sharp pain in her side. A bandit had snuck up on her and struck hard. She stumbled but quickly regained her balance, refusing to let the pain stop her. "Get away from her," Thomas shouted, pushing through the chaos to reach her. He tackled the bandit, sending him crashing to the ground. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Nayeli nodded, catching her breath. "We need to keep fighting. We can't let Victor win." With renewed strength, they turned back to the battle. Nayeli and Thomas fought side by side, their movements synchronized. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the townsfolk rallied around them. As the fight continued, Nayeli noticed the bandits beginning to falter. They were losing ground, their confidence shaken. The townsfolk were pushing them back, and Nayeli felt hope bloom in her chest. "Keep going," Nayeli urged her friends. "We're almost there." With one final push, the townsfolk surged forward, overwhelming the remaining bandits. Nayeli could see Victor's expression shift from anger to fear as he realized they were losing. "No," he shouted, backing away. "You can't do this." "Yes, we can," Nayeli called back, her voice strong. "This is our home." With one last effort, Nayeli charged at Victor, her heart pounding. She struck with fierce determination, her knife finding its mark. Victor staggered back, surprise and pain etched on his face. "You will regret this," he gasped, clutching his wound. Nayeli stepped forward, her expression unwavering. "No, Victor. This ends now." With that, the remaining bandits turned and fled, scrambling to escape the ranch. The townsfolk erupted in cheers, their spirits soaring. They had won. Nayeli took a deep breath, feeling a rush of relief wash over her. They had defended their home together, and they had prevailed. She turned to Thomas, who stood beside her, pride shining in his eyes. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "We fought for each other." Nayeli smiled, feeling gratitude for the community they had built. "Together, we are strong." As the dust settled, they looked around at their friends, who were celebrating their hard-fought victory. The ranch was safe for now, and they had proven their strength. But Nayeli knew the fight was not over. They had to rebuild and continue to protect what they had created. With the support of her community, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would forge a new path, united in purpose and love. The ranch was not just a place, it was a home filled with hope and resilience. And they would continue to stand strong, side by side. In the days following the battle, the ranch was filled with a sense of renewal. Nayeli and Thomas, along with the townsfolk, worked tirelessly to rebuild and reinforce their home. The scars of the fight were still visible, but hope now filled the air. One sunny morning, Nayeli stepped outside to find the townsfolk gathered in the main yard. They were discussing their plans for the future, and she felt a surge of excitement. This was the beginning of something new. "Everyone, listen up," Thomas called, capturing their attention. "We need to focus on rebuilding our community. We've proven that we can defend ourselves, but we must also create a safe place for everyone." Nayeli nodded in agreement. "We need to work together to strengthen our ranch and support each other. We can make this place a home for everyone." The townsfolk murmured in agreement, their spirits high. Nayeli felt a sense of belonging wash over her. They were all in this together, united in purpose. As they began to discuss the necessary repairs, Nayeli noticed a change in the townsfolk. They were no longer just neighbors, they were friends and family, each invested in the well-being of the community. One woman, Maria, stepped forward. "We should plant a garden. It will provide food for everyone, and it will help us grow together," she suggested. "That's a fantastic idea," Nayeli replied, her eyes lighting up. "We can create a space where we can all work together and share the fruits of our labor." The townsfolk enthusiastically agreed, and they began discussing plans for the garden. Nayeli felt a rush of happiness as they shared ideas, each person contributing their thoughts. Days passed as they worked on the garden and the repairs. The townsfolk dug into the earth, planting seeds and nurturing their dreams. Nayeli felt a deep sense of joy as she watched them come together, their laughter echoing through the air. As the garden began to flourish, Nayeli and Thomas took time to reflect on their journey. They often found themselves sitting on the porch, gazing out at the land they had fought to protect. "Do you remember the first day we met?" Thomas asked one evening, a smile on his face. "It feels like a lifetime ago." Nayeli laughed softly. "Yes, I was lost and scared, but you offered me safety. You showed me that there is strength in community." Thomas nodded, his expression serious. "You have become a part of this ranch, Nayeli. You have helped us build something strong." Nayeli felt warmth spread through her heart. "And you have shown me what it means to have a family. This ranch is my home now." As they spoke, Nayeli felt a shift within her. She had found a place where she belonged, surrounded by people who cared for one another. The ranch was not just a piece of land. It was a community filled with love and resilience. One afternoon, as they tended to the garden, Naeli noticed a group of children playing nearby. They were laughing and running, their joy contagious. She watched them with a smile, feeling grateful for the future they were building. "We're creating something special for them," she said, glancing at Thomas. "A safe place where they can grow and thrive." Thomas nodded, his eyes filled with pride. "Yes, we are. And it's because we stood together in the face of danger. We fought for this." As the days turned into weeks, the garden flourished, and so did their community. The townsfolk gathered regularly to share meals, stories, and laughter. They had built a family, united by their struggles and victories. One evening, as they sat around a large table filled with food from the garden, Naeli felt a sense of gratitude wash over her. "We have come so far," she said, looking around at the faces of her friends. "We've built a home together." The townsfolk cheered, their spirits high. They had transformed the ranch into a vibrant place filled with life and hope. Naeli felt proud of what they had accomplished. But even as they celebrated, Naeli couldn't shake the feeling that they needed to look ahead. "We should also think about the future," she said, her voice steady. "We must ensure that we are prepared for anything that may come our way." Thomas nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "Agreed. We can continue to train and strengthen our defenses. We will not let our guard down." The townsfolk listened, their expressions serious. They knew the threat of the bandits still loomed, but they also understood that together, they could face any challenge. In the following weeks, they continued to train and work on the ranch. They built additional defenses, enhancing their watch points and ensuring they were ready for anything. Naeli felt a sense of pride as she watched her friends grow stronger. One afternoon, as they practiced their skills, Naeli turned to Thomas. "What if we invited neighboring communities to join us? We could share what we've learned and create an even stronger alliance." "That's a brilliant idea," Thomas replied, his eyes lighting up. "We could form a network of support across the region." Excitement filled Naeli's heart. Together, they could create something even more powerful. They could build a community that would stand strong against any threat. They discussed their plans with the townsfolk, who were eager to contribute. They began reaching out to neighboring communities, inviting them to join in their efforts. Naeli felt the energy in the air, a sense of hope and possibility. As the communities came together, Naeli realized that their journey had only just begun. They were building a legacy, a testament to the power of unity and resilience. With each passing day, the ranch transformed into a thriving hub of life and support. Naeli knew they had created something special, a place where love, friendship, and strength flourished. Together, they had faced adversity and emerged stronger. The ranch was no longer just a piece of land. It was a home filled with promise and hope for the future. As Naeli stood on the porch, looking out at the vibrant garden and the smiling faces of her friends, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had built a community that could withstand anything, and they would continue to stand together, united in purpose and love.